Earlier, I heard Joe Scarborough on his show say that who raised these people who are voting for Trump.
He is, unhinged. I think he's a very emotional man, and he's not really a rational person. If I thought that the people who were opposed me were actual Nazis, I would say very bad things about them as well. So if you keep calling people Nazis, then you get to dehumanize them in other ways. Even if you don't like Trump or you think that his instincts are wrong, to call him a Nazi not only is paranoia, but it demeans and belittles actual things that Nazis did, and belittles and demeans history.
It's time for the Michele Tafoya podcast.
He is David Harsanyi, and hopefully you've read some of his books. Now you have the opportunity to get his latest, it's really important. It's called Blue Anon, How the Democrats Became the Party of Conspiracy Theories. It's really, really interesting and factual, and it's got his incomparable sense of humor. He writes for the Washington Examiner. He's a syndicated columnist. I'm certain you've seen his writing somewhere. I love talking to this guy. Now, you might come out of this going, holy cow, what do we have to do? Well, we have to keep working. And when I say we, I mean people with common sense. We have to keep working to straighten things out. But David puts a really good spin on this, and I cannot recommend this book highly enough. It's called Blue Anon, How the Democrats Became the Party of Conspiracy Theorists. You got to read it, and we're going to talk about it in just one moment. David, it is great to see you, and I'm excited about this book, The Rise of Blue Anon. It's available November 19th. People need to go get this because I just think it's about time we started turning the tables on this stuff. What made you write the book?
Well, honestly, probably the Russia Collusion Hoax was the main reason and the main idea underlying it. But just in general, I started to think about how the media is always saying that right-wingers are conspiratorial and disinformation and so on. And I'm not saying it's not true, but I think for the most part, it's on the fringes. Whereas on the left, all this stuff is always laundered through the media, sanitized, calibrated, to sound plausible. Experts will tell you they're real, all these things that make those conspiracy theories much more dangerous and effective than someone screaming on YouTube. You have it on 60 Minutes, on major news networks, and the New York Times. So it just kept growing in my mind. And then I started thinking about all the paranoia, and we're seeing it now, frankly, more than ever on the left, where no one ever accused, just from personal experience, no one ever says to me, you're wrong anymore. They tell me I'm a dupe for Putin, or I am bought by big tobacco, whatever, So that part of it too, the paranoia that takes over for actual debate, So those are the reasons. That's what I was thinking about when I wrote the book.
Yeah, this replacement for debate, I think, is really, really important. And people have been experiencing this for a while, that they get called names rather than have an actual debate about things. They get called racists, white supremacists, Christian white nationals, all this stuff. And you mentioned the experts and everyone that's ready to sort of sanitize and legitimize these arguments from the left. How is the left able to co-opt all of this so much more effectively than the right?
Well, honestly, and I go through this in the book, the history of this and how we got here. It's that many, as you say, co-opted many of the institutions of the left, of institutions that are important in American life, have been co-opted by people who are on the left. And increasingly, they are more progressive, which is to say, in my view, more authoritarian about how the state should be. And when you're more authoritarian, you're less open to any kind of open dialogue or debate or things of that nature, just inherently that way. But when you think about just how science has been taken over, it started with, anyone, with global warming. Anyone who says, isn't an alarmist about climate change will immediately be called a denialist or something terrible like that, which alludes to Holocaust denialism. So in a sense, they make everything bad the same. If you are not you can be a Nazi and a climate denier. They'll throw you in one batch as a kind of, conspiracist or whatever. But honestly, to go back, I think it began in part with the Clintons, but it really blossomed with Obama, where
Yeah.
Obama, if you said anything bad about him, you'd be called a racist immediately. And, that was just a way to shut down debate. And I think people get addicted to doing that. To now where literally people are saying Trump is Hitler, and you don't have to like Trump to know that that's not true. But I think maybe sometimes I wonder, do people convince themselves of that and really believe it, or are they just being cynical? Maybe it's a little bit of both. Maybe different people do different things. I don't know.
But there does seem to be this hysteria that I don't recall 20, 25 years ago, like particularly over Trump. And I do think that you're correct, that we can look back at the Obama years and how if you disagreed with anything, you were automatically a racist. And, if you didn't vote for Hillary, you were automatically a woman hater, a sexist. People can't handle the idea of a woman president, which is, to me, laughable. It's got to be the right person, no matter who it is. Earlier, I heard Joe Scarborough on his show say that, who raised these people who are voting for Trump? He actually questioned who raised these people. And I just wonder how mainstream media gets away with shaming and calling Trump supporters or Republicans really of any stripe, people that have decided to vote not for Kamala, but for Trump, in this way. Like, how is this acceptable on American television?
He's one of the worst, right? He's all over my book. He is, unhinged. I think he's a very emotional man, and he's not really a rational person. I would say that part of it is dehumanize. Once you call someone if I thought that the people who were opposed me were actual Nazis, I would say very bad things about them as well. I would want to, I would think that there would be a lot I could rationalize and justify if that were true. So if you keep calling people Nazis, then you get to dehumanize them in other ways. And voters, like, why would a voter, someone vote for a Nazi? Well, it's because they're a bad person. I think that's what Scarborough probably believes. I think there are many reasons why you wouldn't want to vote for Kamala Harris. They're pretty clear, even if you didn't love Trump. And I don't, even if you don't like Trump or you think that his instincts are wrong, to call him a Nazi not only is paranoia, but it demeans and belittles actual things that Nazis did, and belittles and demeans history, which I think is part of this. I think a lot of younger people specifically, but others as well, don't understand history that well, and they think that this is the worst time we've ever been alive, when in most ways this is the best time we've ever been alive in our regular lives. I mean, there's less racism now than ever before, but you think that it was the worst now, you think there was voter suppression all over the place, when it's easier to vote today than it's ever been. And these are also underpin the paranoia of the left, the misogyny you mentioned, the alleged misogyny you mentioned, and racism. And they're always looking for something within your soul, boring into your soul, to understand why and how you could possibly do something they disagree with. And I agree with you. It was never really this way. It was always part of it, but it was never the central message. And the central message right now of Democrats is that Republican parties are filled with Nazis, and they want to elect a Nazi as president, a fascist. So
Sleeping is a problem worldwide. Do you have trouble sleeping? I know I did, and it's a huge problem for people these days. And with my schedule and, my shoulder surgeries and all the things that keep me awake at night, I have trouble sleeping. At least I did. Because let me tell you what I found to help me sleep better. It is not a drug. It's not a prescription. It is a cream. And I put it on at bedtime. Boom, simple. I was a total skeptic. But then I tried it, and I was amazed that it really works. It worked the first night I used it. I sleep great. The company is Sleep Cream, and they use all natural CBD combined with the finest essential oils. They've got some really nice scents. There's lavender. I like the rose. But I know a lot of people are concerned about CBD. This is non-addictive. This is totally pure and all natural, and there's no risk of anything with this. I just put it on my, like, the insides of my forearms or the bottoms of my feet, and I'm asleep within minutes. It helps me relax. It allows my body to do what it's supposed to do, which is sleep. So go find them at sleepcream.com. And the cream is spelled CREME. Just try it for a couple nights. See if it works as well for you as it does for me. And if you don't experience better sleep, Sleep Cream will refund your purchase, guaranteed. You don't have to return anything. Go to sleepcream.com. That's sleepcream.com, with cream spelled CREME, like creme. And for the next few weeks, use the code GAMEDAY at checkout to save $20 off your first order. Game Day, all one word, at checkout for a $20 savings. Are you ready for your best sleep ever? Sleep, CREME.com. Use the code GAMEDAY. So here we are. And again, in your book, you address a lot of this, and I think people need to read it and uncover it. So the thing is that a lot of what is being said and a lot of what comes from the progressive side of the aisle is so provably untrue. So we can look at the Fine People hoax, the Russian collusion that you're focused on here. These things that get so twisted. Just before the election, Donald Trump said that Liz Cheney, it's so easy for her to say, let's, send the kids to war, because she's never been on the other side of a gun. And the seemingly smart people tried to convince audiences of millions that Donald Trump thought Liz Cheney should be put before a firing squad. It is so demonstrably untrue. So I'm wondering, is the other side not doing a good enough job pushing back, or is it just this left-leaning dominance that allows these messages to be pushed through when they're so factually untrue? Yeah, Trump's going to ban abortion nationally. No, that's exactly the contrary to what he said.
Well, it's a good question. I like I say, I think part of it's cynical. I think a lot of people in the news know that he was just making a chicken hawk argument that, frankly, the left, when I was first starting out, in the early 2000s, they were making that argument all the time. And it's, listen, I don't love that kind of attack, but it's well within the norms of political debate. Donald Trump didn't say anything crazy. So how do they get away with it? I think people are whipped into a frenzy during elections, and they believe a lot of crazy stuff. And I think a lot of people do believe it. I don't like to chill speech and say you shouldn't speak because someone's going to then turn to violence. But let's be honest, twice now, or maybe even more times, Donald Trump was, people were trying to assassinate Donald Trump because they believe that he's a fascist and a Nazi. Or think about the guy, I forget his name right now, who went to the baseball field in Alexandria and tried to wipe out the entire Republican congressional squad. These are real things that happen because, I think many people are convinced. Some people are cynical and some people are true believers, and it's a dangerous way to speak. But on the bright side, I think because they're so often pushing easily provable, factually incorrect information, fewer and fewer people trust this iteration of media. I wouldn't even call them media. They're almost just campaign work. It's almost like a wing of the Democratic Party. And fewer and fewer people trust them. And until they fix themselves, they won't be trusted. I'm not sure that will happen anytime soon, but I think that that's a positive, frankly.
Yeah, I would agree with that. First of all, I'm happy that you can't remember the name of the guy that took the gun to the softball baseball practice, because we don't want to remember him. One of your chapters, chapter 4, is called "The Plot Against America," which, as I'm glancing through, the chapters that you list here, and there are 10 of them plus an epilogue. That one jumps out at me. What do you mean about against America?
Well, at some point, it's facetious in a way. I mean, it's about their claim that supporting certain things is a plot against America. So they will tell you that we're going to create a society where women have no rights. They dress up in outfits from The Handmaid's Tale, right? Or they tell people, like you mentioned, that people are Christian nationalists when they simply support ideas that Americans have supported since the beginning. For instance, the right to make your own choices in your private life. Now, obviously, abortion is a separate issue, but I'm just saying in the norm. Or the belief that we get our rights from God or from, natural rights. They scorn that and laugh at that in a way. So every time you do anything that's normal, they act like you're trying to undermine the entire country. I'll give you an example. During the Trump administration, Trump acted in a very normal Republican way. His biggest achievements, I would say, were like tax cuts, trying to close the border, let's say. Remember net neutrality? You would have thought that the world had ended, and that was a position that had been, this 5 years earlier had been the norm among almost everyone. So this paranoid idea that every time you do something Republican, you're undermining the. Give you another example. I'm a little bit all over the place, but they're always talking about democracy. You're undermining democracy. But when you take a deeper dive into what they're saying, you're just undermining Democratic Party policies. There's nothing to do with democracy. This is why I don't like the word democracy when we talk about America, because we have a constitutional republic. It's democratic in many ways. But the way you uphold that is by upholding the Constitution. And what do they want to do? They want to destroy the court. They want to get rid of the Electoral College, the Second Amendment. They undermine the First Amendment all the time with the disinformation stuff. To me, that seems like much more of a danger than the imaginary Handmaid's Tale that's coming, or what was it? The Supreme Court stuff. It's all this paranoia about how they're bought by billionaires. And I mean, Clarence Thomas is the most consistent justice we've probably had in forever. Has never veered from his, I would say, his classical liberal, or I would say just his constitutionalist view, his originalist view of the Constitution. And yet they're constantly talking about him like he's bought. It's just this paranoia that sort of infuses all issues all the time. I don't even know if I answered your question.
Well, you can't. You did. I want to read for people the names of the chapters. The chapter 1 is The Vast Right-Wing Conspiracy Will Never Die. 2 is The Greatest Hoax in American History. 3, No Evidence, No Matter. I mentioned 4, The Plot Against America. 5, The Handmaid's Tale, which you just went into. 6, The Fascist State. 7, Culture of Paranoia. 8, The Jews, with an exclamation point. 9, Apocalypse Nowish, which I love that, Apocalypse Nowish. And 10, Steal from the Poor, Give to the Plutocrats. Epilogue, you don't have to be crazy to win. What does that mean?
The last one?
Yeah, well, you don't have to be crazy to win.
Well, it's kind of a warning to, I think, Republicans that a lot of times because of the frenzy of politics, you start to believe crazy things. I think my view, at least, is that American voters are actually looking for some normalcy because things have been so insane. So people aren't going to like this when I say it, but RFK, for instance, I don't think is a great messenger for normalcy. You know what I mean? I just believe that people are looking for, they're desperately seeking places to find factual evidence for things. They're desperately seeking to find normal politicians, effective, efficient, policies that they can latch onto. At least this is my hope. Maybe I'm wish casting or something, but
I hope it works. I hope it works. Keep going.
But in many ways, I think the Republican Party has generally not been as paranoid. I'm not saying again that they're perfect in any way, but you see it creeping in there too. And sometimes I think it's just kind of this reaction to what's going on. They're going to the Russia collusion thing. You're going to say everyone's bought by China or something. I'm just making that up off the top of my head.
Right.
But it's important to make sure that you don't go places that will burn you in the long run. Now, was there any reckoning for the Russia collusion stuff? Not really, I guess not. But if you look at trust in media, like I mentioned before, it has plummeted. So maybe that is the reckoning. And I'm just making the case that you don't have to be like them to beat them. You can be better than them. That's basically the case.
I hope that too, and I'll wish cast along with you. I love telling you about my friends at besthotgrill.com because they're great people and it's a great company that makes a great product. So, with football back, tailgating's back too, whether it's Friday night lights, Saturday college games, or pro Sundays. Solaire tailgate infrared grills set up fast and heat up quickly, only 3 minutes to get to searing hot temperatures, just like the big backyard Solaires. A Solaire grill, I'm telling you, it'll make you the master of the tailgate with just the juiciest, most flavorful food in the parking lot. And the fast grilling times leaves you more time to enjoy the pregame festivities. They also cool down super fast, so you're not going to miss a minute of the game waiting for this thing to cool down. They're made in the USA. Anywhere, everywhere, and all about infrared grills are portable and perfect for any grilling on the go, from picnics to camping, RVs to boating, but especially tailgating. And this is the perfect holiday gift. I can't think of anyone who loves food that would not want one of these anywhere, everywhere, and all about infrared grills. So, first, you can start by amazing your tailgating friends with the great food you grill with your Solaire infrared grill, and then you can gift them to the people that you love. Learn more about these fantastic grills and Solaire's Try Before You Buy demo rental program at besthotgrill.com. Besthotgrill.com, made in America, besthotgrill.com. What is I like to believe what you just said about the lack of faith in media, the lack of trust that it has plummeted. It certainly has from my point of view, and I see it. And sometimes you can just feel these things and you can sense it. Ratings demonstrate that to a certain extent. But what is there anything anecdotal or evidence, some evidence, statistical or otherwise, that you have that where you really think trust in the media has plummeted? Because I hope it has, because it needs a rebuild.
I mean, there's polling. I mean, there's Gallup polling. Gallup takes, I think, a yearly poll on all institutions to see where they stand in trust level. And the media, listen, they might not have the pinpoint number, but the trajectory is downward. And I think that's evident. I was just thinking the other day, it used to be the New York Times would send out a story and you didn't have to wait a day to make sure it was true. Like, you assumed like maybe it was biased, but in general, they were going to tell you something that was true. Now, I don't know if that's the case anymore. I have to wait, make sure that everything they said was right, wait for the blowback, this and that. And that goes on with every institution, major media institution, I think. So just the way people listen, I am online, and the way people react to it now is obviously that they immediately don't, at least conservatives don't trust it. But
Right.
I think, that's bad actually for our country. We need institutions to trust. I don't know that we trust any anymore. I mean, public health officials we can't trust,
Right.
The media we can't trust. I think the only functioning institution in America right now is probably the Supreme Court. I don't think there is any other one that we can think of. Higher ed we can't trust. Our elite schools we can't trust. Experts we can't trust. And all of those people participate in the kind of conspiratorial thinking that makes us not believe them anymore, and why we can't trust them. So,
well, it's interesting too. The effects of that, David, are that you see a lot of kids applying to schools in the Southeast now. We've seen, all these applications to Florida and Alabama and Auburn and Mississippi and Texas. Those tend to be conservative areas. You see people going to other places for their news. The traffic on Twitter is enormous. You see, well, certainly Fox News being sort of the more, I think, the most normal of the cable news networks. Their ratings reflect a greater trust in them. There are schools now popping up that, and let's say the Barry Weiss and the Free Press and this University of Austin, and we've always had Hillsdale. But do you think that this huge ship is trying to turn itself? Do you get the sense that there's enough of a push against all this Blue Anon craziness that we are going to get back to some normal?
No.
Oh,
Not yet, because schools, for instance, elite schools have tenured professors all over the place that are insane, who teach ahistorical nonsense to people. My chapter on the Jews is because anti-Semitism, based on a lot of conspiracy theories, is rampant on the progressive left. Rampant. And I don't know how you can just turn a ship and fix that. Sure, there are a few universities here and there, but the capital expenditure to have a big school to focus and reinvigorate education, it's going to take a lot. It's like Elon Musk bought Twitter. I think that was great, actually. It opened it up to free speech. I don't love everything that goes on there because it's a little tough sometimes, but in general, I'm happy to have people have their say. But the thing is, where is the New York Times of there's the free press, there's other sites. It's great, but I worked in a newspaper for years. It takes a lot of money to really find a story, to dig in. Sometimes you need two reporters for a year to get to a story, and not a lot. And if these people really wanted to help the right, I think they would invest in building, really big journalistic efforts, investigative efforts in this way to help. And obviously, there are a lot of good reporters all over. I'm not saying they're not, who are looking at the right things. I work at the Washington Examiner. We have reporters who do that, but not to the level and to the funding that you have at like ABC News, CBS, all these places, just huge institutions. So I think that needs to be done. Yeah.
Yeah, that's distressing to hear you say that. Costs are increasing for everything, but are you feeling overwhelmed by the increasing cost of health insurance? Have you had enough of not having control over your healthcare dollars? Well, introducing ShareRight, healthcare done the right way. At ShareRight, you're not just a number, you're part of a community that cares. And forget about paying excessive premiums. No, with ShareRight, you stand to save 30 to 50% compared to health insurance. Think about what you could do with all those savings. But beyond the savings, ShareRight ensures you have access to the care you deserve and precisely when you need it, from routine checkups to unexpected emergencies. With ShareRight, your healthcare is their top priority. So empower yourself today by taking control of your healthcare costs. Visit shareright.org/Tafoya. So ShareRight, all one term, ShareRight.org/Tafoya to learn more and see how much you can save. ShareRight.org/TAFOYA. ShareRight.org/Tafoya for healthcare done the right way.
I think that needs to be done. Yeah.
Yeah, that's distressing to hear you say that it's going to take that kind. And so I guess I would go to this. For funding, the left always has George Soros and his billions. I guess now the right has Elon Musk, but is that an equal playing field? Is there not even close?
Well, maybe in a political sense, it is. You see the amount of money being spent on campaigns. That's important, I guess, right? But I think it's more important in many ways to have, they run universities. They have huge endowments in a lot of these schools. They're not just left-wingers, but insane left-wingers in a lot of these places, and they have tons and tons of money. It's going to take a lot of work to push back against that. And you even see it in public schools, public schools meaning high schools and junior high schools and middle schools, where they have unlimited amount of money given to them by government. It's not unlimited, but a lot of money.
Lots.
And they come out of there. My kids, when I was living in Maryland, they had to read Ta-Nehisi Coates in middle school. That is the big problem, because you're creating a bunch of kids who I don't think even understand civics enough. So when you make an argument about constitutional governance, they don't even probably understand what you're talking about or why. And that, public schools were built initially so that we could have some common understanding of, to make good citizens, not just to be educated, but to make good citizens. And we're not doing that anymore in many places. So that's another problem.
Oh, I wanted to come out of this feeling somewhat optimistic, so I'll and I'm not, but I'll ask you this, David, because we're seeing a lot of the same things. But I'm always hopeful. This is, I'm always because I guess without it, I'd probably go a little bit batshit. So what gives you hope, David? Is there anything out there on the horizon or beyond that gives you hope?
Yeah, I don't. I'm sorry if I come off so negative. I think I'm just trying to be honest about it and
No,
how I
you
see
are.
it. Yeah, and I am. Listen, I'm just a writer, right? But I'm spoiling for the fight on this because I think I'm right. Whenever I see, for instance, Kamala or whoever avoiding an interview, avoiding a debate, I say to myself, it's because they don't believe in what they're saying. And the people I respect, and there are many of them on the right, they believe in what they're saying and they're willing to take on anyone and talk about it. So I think that I hope at least the truth will win out. I love America, and I think that there's still a spirit here that you don't see elsewhere, and that there are plenty of people who aren't going to give in. But I mean, we shouldn't fool ourselves either about how tough it is to turn these things around. The left have taken over most of our institutions, and the left has gotten crazier and less open to free expression and to debate than before, filled with paranoid views of American life and American people and American history. Think about how they view American history. Kids in high school learn the 1619 Project, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
How can we expect them to come out then normal, right? They think America's a racist place, the worst place on earth, when it's the least racist country on earth. So anyway, again, I'm off on a rant, but I'm positive that I think the truth can win out, but it's going to take a lot of work and some time, I think, for that to happen. Because
it's taken a lot of work and time to get us to where we are. So
that's right.
I remember when I had my first horrible breakup in my teens, and someone said to me, well, you guys were together 3 years. It's going to take at least a year and a half to get over it. And I was like, seriously, that's the rule of thumb? So, but I think in this case, it may take us twice as long to get out of what we've gotten ourselves into, David. The book is The Rise of Blue Anon, and it's fascinating, and it's written the way only David Harsanyi can write. It's got some wit. It's wonderful. Available November 19th. Go get it. I think this is important stuff.
You can pre-order it too, though.
See? Pre-order now, yeah. Folks. The Rise of Blue Anon by David Harsanyi. I love reading your work, and I love talking to you, and I'm happy to promote this book because it's funny. Maybe I'm just surrounded by like-minded people who want to fight really hard back. I hope there are a lot of them out there, and I hope they'll all buy your book, David.
I appreciate that so much. Thank you.
Folks, be brave, do good. The Rise of Blue Anon by David Harsanyi, available now for pre-order, out in bookstores and on the shelves November 19th. We hope that you'll pick up a copy. And thanks to David. We'll see you next time.